Good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? For those of you who are watching the video stream here, you see that there's a little bit of a different look. I'm outside. I've got a beautiful green background. You can probably hear a little bit of the birds and hopefully not so much of the construction. A little bit of chaos going on here. They're laying fiber in the neighborhood, which is fantastic, but a little disruptive. So I've been off the air the last couple days. On Tuesday, I was live tweeting the AWS NYC Summit, and throughout the day, I was firing up some tweets, and then on Wednesday I didn't broadcast because I was in transit, which was unexpected, and a friend of mine had actually pointed out, like, hey, you should have done one from the road, either from the cab or from the airport or whatever the case may be, and they were absolutely right, but I was a wreck, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Not me being a wreck, but about balance in general. And I think the security community has a real challenge around balance, around mental health, and it's somewhat understandable, but it also is not. It's a tricky subject, and I think it's one that we don't talk about often. Mental health in general, work-life balance, these are difficult things, especially when you're just starting out and you don't have seniority and you feel like you need to adhere to a certain idea of what work looks like, as well as other people's ideas that they're pushing on top of you. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but a lot of the time it's like, no, there's so much work that needs to be done. You need to be doing 12 or 14-hour days. That works for a little while, but after a certain amount of time, you start to burn out and you need balance. You need to figure out what you do to relax, how you enjoy self-care, dealing with your family if you have one, nurturing those relationships with a partner, with your friends. All this stuff is super, super important, and I think it's really easy to lose perspective on it. And I don't think that's what happened this week. For me, it was simply the matter of I had my radio column on Monday morning, so I was up well before the crack of dawn to get down to the studio to do that, countered with a late basketball game. Despite my aging years, I am still playing in basically a beer league here in town with people very, very much younger than I, and it is a stark weekly reminder of how much I am not paying attention to caring for my own self, making sure that I am in better shape and eating better and consistently exercising, though I do get out each week and at least, plod down and up and down the court, trying to make a contribution, and it's a fun social action. But early morning broadcast, late night game, flipped around with an early morning flight, and New York was supposed to be in and out. I was supposed to be back in time to relieve the babysitter to let my partner go to hockey, but did not happen because some weather. Interesting thing, if you were at the summit, you probably saw the announcements where they're like, oh, the front entrance is closed, then the side entrance is closed, then the roof is kind of closed because there's too much rain. Shut down all the flights going back north up to Canada, so I ended up spending the night in New York, which is no big deal, except I wasn't at all prepared for it. So quick trip to the drugstore, booked a hotel. On the bright side, I got to have dinner with a bunch of other community heroes, which was a really engaging and reinvigorating conversation. But of course, the next morning I was a little bit under the weather, let's just wrecked. It wasn't, it was just couple days, long days, not feeling fantastic, sleeping in a hotel room unexpectedly, had to rearrange a bunch of schedule stuff, just kind of, and so I didn't do a broadcast, but that leads to today's broadcast, which is talking about that subject, because while that's a minor scheduling glitch, all too often I run across folks and friends who are just burning the candle at both ends. They are just running nonstop. They are working long hours in an office. They're not taking enough downtime, and it's sort of around this illusion of, well, I'll take a big vacation at some point. And while big vacations are great, I've got a couple, week plus planned myself later this summer, but you need to take little days here and there, or you need to counterbalance of like, hey, I was on a trip the last 2 days, so I'm only going to make sure I just kind of check my email a little bit and keep some things moving today, but I'm not going to dive in and, do a full 8 hours or something like that. You need to be able to have that self-awareness of understanding how you recharge, and to understand that you're not at full strength and you need to recharge. And I think it's something I struggle with all the time, but I feel I'm 10 times better than I was 5 years ago, 100 times better at it than I was at the start of my career. And of course, I was a much younger man then, so it wasn't nearly as critical. But if I look back and realize if I had started teaching myself habits, the right habits, to figure out that, like, hey, I've been pushing really, really hard, I need to pull back a little bit, and I need, to take an extra day here or an afternoon here, or just, sit down and read a book for half an hour to take a little mini break. It doesn't have to be anything massive. If I had started to teach myself those habits much earlier in my career, I think I would be much better off. And I think in the community in general, we see extreme examples of this. We see a lot of subtle examples that we don't necessarily call out. And it's not I'm not saying it's your responsibility to call out someone you see and you're like, hey, you really should do something about it. But I think in the community, we need to be more aware of the fact that we are in high stress jobs. We are in jobs where there's a lot of pressure, where there's a lot of, in tech in general, there is a lot of this conception of like, you need to be working hard all the time. You need to be just crushing it nonstop. And I think it's responsible, it's incumbent on us to turn around and say, like, it's okay to take some self-time. It's okay to take some downtime and to just say, hey, wait a minute, I need an afternoon to sit outside, enjoy the birds, maybe a beverage, and just, read a book, or have a great dinner with friends that's really reinvigorating, or go for a run, or all of those things. I think that is absolutely critical, because for me, I've really seen this over the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years of my career. When I do that, I end up doing much better work. My work quality increases significantly, and I get more done in less time when I'm better balanced. And I think that's a really hard thing for people to grasp with, because you sit there and go, well, no, I need to put 8 hours into this paper for it to be better. But if 7 of those hours are you basically getting frustrated and pounding your head on the keyboard, that's not a good use of your time. Step away, recharge, refresh, get a new perspective, sit down, and that 1 hour, you're going to just pump out gold. That is a huge, huge up, but it takes a really long time to get there. And I don't feel I'm there. I feel I'm still struggling with this all the time, but I'm trying to put the support structure in place with friends, with family, in order to help me make those choices easier, so that I am more refreshed and that I am able to deal with kind of 2 long days in a row and I have to stay overnight unexpectedly, much better. And that is work in progress, like everything to do with balance, with mental health, with self-care. It's always a continuous practice. It's always a continuous work in progress. But, it's something that we need to be talking about. We need to get out there, and we need to recognize that it is an issue and that it will lead to better results if we pay attention to it. What do you think? Hit me up online here, Mark NCA, in any community, down below in the comments, or me at markn.ca by email. How do you deal with balance? How do you find balance? How do you tackle any mental health issues, burnout? What are your tips and tricks? Have you struggled with it? Have you found pushback from the teams you're working with? Love to keep this conversation going. As always, I hope you're set up for a fantastic day, hopefully one that might be outside and enjoying some beautiful weather wherever you are. I will talk to you online and see you on the show tomorrow.